We're in a game of League, and I'm about to show you how to win your games as XAYAH. What is up, guys? My name is MipZ, and welcome back for yet another League of Legends video. So today we're playing none other than my old one-trick XAYAH. I used to play her, I think about 2 years ago or so, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. I don't quite remember exactly when, but I used to one-trick this champion for a long time. I absolutely loved her. She's actually one of the very first champions that I ever did a guide on. If you guys go way back, you'll find a very well edited and guide of this champion with a lot of cool combos and stuff. But yeah, this champion is something that I know in the back of my pocket. I know everything about her. I absolutely love playing her, and I hope I can teach you guys exactly how to play this champion. So regardless of whether or not you are a beginner, an advanced player, intermediate, or something, then hopefully there's going to be something in this video for you, so you can go ahead and master this champion. So yeah, if you want to watch this, then basically what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to explain to you guys how to play this champion in your early, mid, and late game. And I'm going to be using this game as kind of an example to let you guys in on my train of thought. My focus is not going to be on playing perfectly. It is more of showcasing and making it entertaining to learn. So don't expect absolutely perfect plays. All right. So before we do get too much into everything, then make sure, if you are new in here, to go down below, click that subscribe button, join into our awesome community, and also, if you do enjoy this video, but just the least, or find it helpful or something along those lines, I really appreciate it if you would smash that like button for me. It really does help me out a ton. And lastly, if you want to hang out with me live, go to twitch.tv/MipZ_live. All right, so with all that out of the way, let's kind of just move into this one. So because of this intro, I kind of gave up the level 2 power spike, so we're going to try and play safe. Unfortunately, I'm not sure that my Alistar is fully in on this, so yeah, so we got just off to a pretty rocky start because he did not respect the opponent getting level 2. That kind of forced my heal. Anyways, I'll make sure that we deal with all this along the way regardless, but it is of course going to make this lane a little bit more difficult. All right, so let's talk about, first of all, why you pick XAYAH. What can this champ do for you, and why should you even care? Like, what is she? Well, first of all, XAYAH is one of those champs that has an absolutely endless potential in terms of outplaying your opponents. Oh, that was actually a really good play by our teammate. Sadly, it won't really make too much of a difference. We can get one down though. All right, XAYAH is one of those champs that has endless potential in terms of outplaying your opponents, both mechanically and also just by outthinking them and positioning your, I guess you can also call that mechanics, but good positioning of your feathers and kind of hiding them a little bit such that your opponent doesn't really know what you're up to. Of course, there are cool tricks that I'll try and see if I can show you guys. As an example, the E and then flash. This is going to allow you to actually hit an instant snare onto a target without them really having much of a chance of reacting. So right here, I'm going to go for what we call the instant. Whoop. I'm not going to be chasing this. It's going to be too risky. My ally should have it. So what I did there, and I really want to, I can't do much about this. I'm not going to chase. What I did there is what we call the instant snare. And the instant snare basically works by you firing off your Q with an auto attack, and then while your feathers are moving there, so basically like this, like while they're moving, you instantly fire them or start recalling them back. Even the auto that's on its way will still start moving back as well. So it's actually very useful. All right, we'll talk a lot more about all these combos pretty soon, but I just want to shove this under turret so I can back out because this is getting way too risky. All right, so as we're backing, I want to talk a little bit more about the kind of the pros of this champion, then we'll move into how you actually do play her in the early game. So first of all, she has an excellent wave clear in the late game, which is absolutely insane. It's really useful and it's really fun. Like this is a very, I want to make this very clear. This is a very rewarding champion to play, like extremely rewarding and extremely fun. But her late game, she's absolutely great in late game. She's an all-around good champion. She's good in the early game, mid-late game, and late game. She's not She doesn't exceed in the early game, but she's not that bad there once you learn her. Her wave clear in late game is absolutely insane. Her ult is something that really puts you in a situation where you can outplay and outmaneuver your opponents, and even things like assassins like Zed, etc. will have a hard time basically shutting you down if you have proper use of your ult and if you use it at the right time. As I said, there's endless potential for outplaying your opponents on this champion. She has a great burst in mid to late game. This is where she really exceeds. And even in early game, the burst is not too shabby. Like, it ain't great, but it ain't bad either. So in terms of how we're playing her, it's basically that we're of course not picking this champion for her early game. We are picking her for her late game, where she does become quite a beast. And she's a champion where, because of the fact that her abilities allow her to snare several targets and also deal an immense amount of damage to several targets at once, then she can actually basically solo carry games. She's a really good ADC for solo queue, and it's something that you really want to be thinking about. Your ult can be an absolutely insane tool okay, so they're actually gonna go for kind of a weird play because all of them are in there. I don't really know what their plan is here. But we see it. Sadly, my team is kind of splitting up here. I won't be able to do anything, so I'm backing out. I'm not gonna be able to do this. It's just gonna be, yeah, that blue is gone. It's way too risky going in there at this point. I don't know why or Sin moved in there. It was kind of pointless. My team is pointlessly fighting right now, which again, don't think this is a great plan. All right, so instead, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna shove this forward. Gonna give me a little bit of room to try and see whether or not I should be doing anything. So yeah, that was kind of a weird fight. All right. Some of the things that XAYAH can struggle a little bit against is if she's playing against super aggressive comms, and like she's kind of weak when she's up against crowd control when her ult is down. Your ult can be a huge counter to any kind of CC, even like a Leona ult. You can just use your own ult on it in order to basically ignore it. One of the things I see a lot with people playing XAYAH, especially when they're new, is they misplace their old feathers and they don't think forward in terms of those. Also, they completely neglect the fact that you can poke using your Qs. Like, yes, your Q doesn't do like immense amount of damage, but using your Q here to kind of hit your opponent can actually be pretty good. And then when they step up for farming, you can go ahead and you can actually use the minions to fire off damage onto the backline. And the reason why this works is because of the fact that all of your auto attacks deal this AoE damage or pierces through enemies whenever you have feathers up. So right here, she's ignoring the fact that I have feathers in a good position. So I'm gonna, of course, punish her for it. Sadly, my support kind of messes up again, which is very unfortunate. Again, right here, she ignores it, and we completely and utterly turn that around into a win. And this is something you gotta kind of learn with XAYAH, is all the time keep track in your head of where you're positioning your feathers and also why you're positioning them in certain places. Sometimes it can be good to angling them, putting them in bushes where the enemy actually won't really notice them as much. And just generally, there's so many cool tricks you can do with her, and it's literally your creativity is the limit in terms of tricking people with your feathers. The general rule, and this is something we see a lot with newer XAYAH players, is they try to put down a million feathers before using their E, and then they end up never using their E, or people or their enemies reposition or you reposition, and then the feathers don't hit anyway. The general rule for XAYAH, in my opinion, is that you should aim to hit 3 to 4 feathers. Anything more is great, but don't go for it. Generally speaking, use your E when you have 3 to 4, because this is when your snare hits and this is when you have secured damage. So anything above that is great, but really you have to be 100% sure that you can get them back and hit your opponent. If not, just do it at 3 or 4, get that cooldown so you potentially can use it more than once throughout a fight. Using your ult as an offensive tool can be a good thing, but it is a super risky play to make. And the reason for this is basically that if you make it, use it as an offensive tool, then you don't have it as a defensive tool. So really, you really want to be careful with this, especially as you get into mid to late game. We'll talk more about that once we're there. You can be a bit more loose with it in terms of laning phase, especially if you get ahead. You can do offensive plays using it and do flash plays and cool stuff with it. But again, do it very mindfully, because it is your only survivability ability, and it's really punishing if you actually go ahead and miss that one. All right, so let's talk a bit more specific about how to actually play the early game. So first and foremost, really nice play, by the way. Right here, we can use our feathers to get over Thresh's ult. Sadly, I did it a little too late. Whoop, I need to eat that one. All right, so I can go for a flash play in about 4 seconds. We do have our W if need be, and I should be able to win the fight versus this guy if we want to. I see Rengar here. Whether or not I won't be able to do anything, and if I flash here and this fight drags out, then Rengar is gonna kill me. But he moves back up, so potentially we could do something here. But I think we'll play it safe. We won't go for it. We potentially could do it, especially if we can get like a snare on him. I am gonna have to flash his grab.
Talking to anybody about anything is never on my to-do list.
We have Rengar here, so we're just gonna go ahead. We're gonna back off pretty. We need these minions, and then we'll back off. All right, so I can go ahead. I can finish my item. Maybe we should stay. Actually, we're fine. We're fine. We don't need a back. We actually don't need the back. All right, so let's talk a little bit more specific about how to play the early game. So the early game, generally speaking, you need to remember that you are an ADC. And especially with XAYAH, as I said, we're not picking her for her early game. She's not bad in early game, but it's not the reason why we pick her. We pick her because of her late game and because of her immense potential. And yes, you can outplay people in the early game. You're probably also actually get better and better at her. Going to be able to do so quite consistently, more or less. Like she's an insane champion. She really, really is. Whoop, gotta dodge that one. She really, really is. So you need to kind of practice this, but you're not picking her to win laning phase. If you do, great, but your primary concern is getting farm. Farm is our main source of income in the game. If you look at any game, you will actually go ahead and notice that most of your farm, regardless of which lane you're playing, is coming from minions and not from killing champions. So our primary source of income is farm. We want to make sure that we last hit as many minions as possible. What we can do is with XAYAH, because of her amazing tool, we can actually poke our opponents while farming. This is kind of neat. The way we do this is by utilizing our Q to basically fire off our feathers, hit our opponent, and we can drag them back again just like so. So you can see how we took about like 1/6 of her health. Yes, it's not a lot, but if you do the combo right, you can actually do the instant snare combo on them, and you're gonna have her snare again, dealing more damage and potentially setting up a kill. All right, so a pretty good gank seems to be going down. I'm a little late out for it. I do have heal. I should have healed. I should totally have healed. Also, I should use Galeforce. All right. So right here, we will put this down and we'll kill him. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. All right. So right here, it was my fault that I didn't heal or Rengar or Xin Chao, sorry. Wow. And now I was looking in chat instead of looking here. God dang it. All right. This is what happens when you don't pay full attention to the game. And I've said this before. This one is totally on me. I totally get my mate that's a little more focused, that really wants me to like, why are you not doing this? Totally makes sense. But when I'm explaining these and doing these gameplays, as I said, the focus is more on kind of the educational side of it and entertaining rather than making the perfect play. This is a good example of it. I should of course have used my heal on Xin. He would probably have survived then. We've been in a much better situation. Maybe Rengar would have gotten him down, but probably it would have saved or Alistar's life in that case. So back to everything. In laning phase, you want to play safe. You want to farm up. You can follow up on your enemy or on your support setting up a kill or your jungler coming down to lane. Also, try to poke your opponents as much as you can while farming. This means when you use your Q on minions, then try and do it such that you angle it and hit it onto the enemy ADC or support. The same counts with your auto attacks. When you have your feather stacks up here, then basically you're poking whenever you're auto attacking if you angle it correctly. So really do think about this. Also, keep in mind with your position, it's quite important in terms of, let's see if we can do something here. All right, nice. I'm backing off. We can start taking Drake here. We're gonna get a little bit of HP. There we go. Very nice. All right. So basically, one of the things you need to be very much aware of is where you put your feathers. I think you can do in laning phase, and I think this is quite crucial, and I don't know if I said that properly, but when you do poke your enemy, you can use the minions to do so. So you basically use your Q on the ranged minions to hit the enemy that's sitting further back. You can see how far this actually hits when you fire this way with your auto attack. You can see we hit all the way when I'm here and hit the minions here. I actually hit all the way out here, which means I have longer range than a Caitlyn in lane potentially. And yes, my auto attacks only deal about 30% damage on targets others than the minion that I'm attacking or the champion that I'm attacking, but it's still damage. You still got to count it in. It's still pretty important. So really keep this in mind. So try to poke your opponents. If you are not like in a scenario where or if you're sitting in a scenario where you have more time and space to poke the ADC let's see if we can do this, or the support for that matter, then go ahead and do so in between minions and put them in a better, like, poke them as much down as you can. All right, so basically the laning phase, it's all about playing safe. If you're pushed on your turret, make sure you get your farm. Otherwise, try not to push your own lane too much. If possible, try to play right around the middle. Unless you know where the enemy jungler is. If you know where he is, you can go ahead and, of course, push the lane further and push them on their turret and sit and try and poke them in there. You can use your feathers, especially against better players. You can, actually also against players that are not that good. You can put your feathers down in places to try and zone them away from it. Good players will know that they're not supposed to go there because it's literally just means they take damage. And bad players will probably just step in the damage, like we've seen right here in this game, where I've been putting down my feathers and then they literally just step in it and I just grab it back because they're not paying attention. So XAYAH is an ADC where people really have to be on their toes when they're playing against her, because otherwise she's gonna fool them pretty easily, and so are you. But it really requires just as much effort from you to stay on top of your game, stay kind of in the mindset of how to do this. All right, so if you're building something like the Galeforce, there's a pretty cool trick, because this helps you just like the flash does. You can do the same things with the Galeforce, is that you can click your E and then you can Galeforce to the side to reposition where your feathers is landing. So you can actually use this to catch somebody when you have feathers on the ground. So really keep this in mind. It's extremely good. All right, so we've talked about the early game. Let's talk a bit more about, or start talking about the mid to late game. So how do we want to play this champion? Well, in the mid to late game, what we want to be doing is that we actually want to go ahead and we want to go to the mid lane. We want our mid laners to go to the side lanes. I've said this a million times before. If the mid laner is too stubborn and stays mid lane and doesn't want to, and you've told them in chat, then go ahead and go to the side lanes yourself, because you need that gold and you need that XP. But optimally, ideally, you want to make sure that I can't help him. Ideally, you want to go mid lane because then you're closer to all objectives, and that basically puts you in a situation where you can help out with everything. And also, you are a team fighter at its bone like XAYAH. Yes, you can outplay people. You can even 1v2 when you do it well, but that's not why you play her. Well, I don't know why you play, but that is not why you should be playing her. Maybe it is a little bit, but you know what I mean. You can do these flashy plays, but you shouldn't aim out to make them. It's something that should happen naturally if you're forced into it. And I think that's kind of the point of it, right? All right. So in terms of the mid to late game, we group up with our teammates we need to be present for all objectives as much as we can, meaning when drakes are up, we go there. When we're diving for, or when we're going for turrets, we're there. The way we play the engages, and the cool thing about XAYAH is she threats anything from tanks to squishies to assassins, and she's really hard to deal with as long as in team fights you generally speaking keep your ult for defensive. And this is quite important because it allows you, like even a set diving you, and even right here as we potentially have a Rengar comp moving in on us, we just use this as our defensive tool. And yeah, look at the dead cat. How does that feel? It doesn't feel great to be Rengar now. He came up here. He thought he was the bigger cat. He thought that he was the big animal in the food chain. Guess what? He wasn't. He really wasn't. And this is what you gotta realize when you're playing against XAYAH, that when she has her ult, she's really not to be messed around with. She can do a lot. And there's a lot of outplay. Things that I could have done better in this engage right here. And I'm actually really sad that I didn't do it. I haven't played this champ a ton the last couple of months, so I'm really rusty on her. But I one-tricked her for so long that most of it is, what do you say? It's like habit. I just, yeah, I played it so much. So, but in terms of this champion, then right there, what I should have done against Rengar before, even though we killed him, we did fine. Then I could actually eat before I flashed instead of flashed and then eat. That would have been a better case. Right here, I'm going to be very careful because I don't have ult. Where 2 people, 3 should probably be giving up this Drake. It's simply not worth it. I'm going to look if there's something I can do, but there isn't. It's just not worth it at all. Oh, God. All right, I am probably... He's going to survive with 1 HP. I kind of failed because I used my Galeforce into the wall, which is... Otherwise, I would have survived this. Because I would have snared Rengar, but I just failed. I'm sorry for the mistakes, chat. I'm sorry. All right. So in terms of items, we're going to buy Phantom Dancer now. But yeah, as you guys can see, it's kind of... She has a very cool dynamic about her that you can really use for quite a lot. We just got rushed by this absolutely insane champion. But yeah, she's pretty insane in terms of her outplay potential. Also, your feathers and your E's can hit several targets at once. So in terms of when we do team fight, we want to play the backline. And we want to do this most of the time. You can, as you get more and more experienced with XAYAH, start using your ult a bit more offensive. But only and only if you know what the opponent has. So if you know, well, they don't have this, or maybe Rengar already used his stuff, or somebody else used their thing. Like, if you're tracking what they've used and you're like, okay, this is used now, I'm not in any danger, then you can go ahead and you can use it for an offensive tool. But generally speaking, your ult is a great defensive tool. And even when you use it for defensive plays, then you, like, potentially, if you just angle it correctly, it's still going to be really good for offensive usage. One thing that newer players probably don't know about your ult is you can actually use your flash while being mid-air on your ult. This is quite useful and something that you need to know. Like, it is extremely useful, because this means that you can actually totally change the game in terms of how you're doing things. But this means that you need to plan ahead. When somebody dives you, let's say Rengar comes here on me and they're all moving up, then what I could do is I could actually take my ult and I could angle it this way, and then I could flash over this wall while having it. So you could do a lot of really, really cool plays. All right, so I'm a little scared here because there's a cat. Okay, there it is. There's the little cat. Yep, and this is where you also can kind of see the burst off this champion. It's absolutely ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, in terms of the late game, you want to play the backline. You want to go for the closest target, but you constantly need to think about when you are going for the closest target, then you want to still angle and think about how you're angling your feathers such that they're potentially going to be the most useful for you throughout that engage. So keep an eye on their entire team of how they're playing the fight, what they're doing, and whether or not you should pull your feathers now to put off the snare on a certain target or burst, or whether or not you should hold on it for a second. Like, there's so many cool stuff you can do on this champion, but it really comes down to observing everything. You can also go for like really aggressive plays and try and get the backline and other stuff. But generally speaking, you should rather try and AoE whatever is in range rather than going for super risky plays, because going backline is generally very, very risky. I'm gonna try and see if we can get an extra engage here just for the heck of it. Okay, this engage is already over, to be honest. Right here, as I'm running, I'm gonna just fire off my W, get some damage on. Gonna pre-fire our Qs out because we know a Rengar is probably gonna jump our face in a moment. Actually, I was a little too slow here, but that's gonna be enough potentially for Sin to get him. What I could have done here as well, if I had seen and I didn't see this, if this was ranked and I was like hyper focused on playing, then I would probably have noticed where Rengar used his ult or when. And this would have told me which angle he came from. I was unsure whether or not he was running this way or was over here. If I knew where he was, I could have kind of spread my feathers out a bit more, and I could actually went ahead and pre-eat and tried to see if I could hit him. Because if I use these minions as an example, or these minions here, sorry, I could set my Q in the middle. I could fire one auto here and one auto here to spread them out, move a bit up, and then use my E. This would actually kind of grant me vision in that lane, because I would be able to see where it hits. You can, like, even though you don't gain vision when your ability hits, then you do see the animation of it hitting. You see this feather, like feathery bright light when it hits. So you can actually use that to your advantage. When you're chasing stuff down, you of course want to make sure that you do go ahead and use your W for the movement speed and attack speed. And yeah, it's just so many cool things. But really, in mid to late game, it's very important that you group with your teammates, hang out with them when they're subjective, but don't ever fall off in terms of farming. Farming is your primary source of income, so make sure that you utilize that. All right, so in terms of the team fighting, go for the nearest target. Make sure that you place your feathers up, like, to hit as many targets as possible. XAYAH actually really likes fighting in places like narrow corridors, because it's really limited where the enemy can go ahead. Whoop, gonna be a little careful here. Where the enemy can go ahead and place themselves. All right, so right here again. Actually messed that up quite a lot. We did get out of it. Whoop, we can snare her and we can run away. I actually misclicked Galeforce by a total mistake. I totally failed this, but somehow we got out of it. And I think that says quite a lot about this champion, like just how freaking good she is. Also, we really need to back. We have 3.2k gold. And yes, we could have finished this game before, but I also really feel like it's fun for you guys to see like the potential, and we can try and see if we can do some more outplays. If the game lasts, I don't think it will, but if it lasts to the point where we get flash again, I'll try and do like a forced E flash play so you guys can see how that looks in action. But really think about your positioning of feathers, and I cannot emphasize this enough, that you need to constantly think ahead. And especially even if you see your opponent pushing to you, putting out your feathers behind them and then their wave pushes up to you is actually really good, because a lot of enemies won't notice them anymore because they're not close to them. So imagine in bot lane that they're pushing, you just put feathers down. Yes, your feathers might not deal damage really at that point, but if the wave is just pushing forward, then you're gonna have these feathers already ready and potentially be in a point where you can go ahead and you can, oh whoop, I gotta be careful here. We don't have ult, we can get killed really easily. Yeah, and this is the thing, this actually shows really well the biggest weakness of XAYAH. When you don't have your ult, you are of course weak to assassins, but otherwise every time, if you're quick enough on like Rengar, you just ult it and you won't even take the initial damage from his jump. Like, you can do so many cool things on this champion. She is absolutely ridiculously good. So yeah, I think my team is probably gonna finish the game off here. So that's gonna be a GG. I really do hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned a thing or two about how to play XAYAH and what she can do as a champion. I really enjoyed making this. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed it, found it helpful or anything, then I would greatly appreciate it if you would smash that like button for me, for the YouTube algorithm. And don't forget to go down below and subscribe to the channel and become a part of our absolutely amazing community. And lastly, if you want to hang out with me live, then go to twitch.tv/MipZ_live. But that is going to be it for this one. As always, stay awesome, have fun, and take it easy, guys.